Welcome to First Dates and Soulmates, the romance podcast that asks the very deep questions like, what happens when your type isn't tall, dark, and handsome, but instead tall, shadowy, and literally not a human? Today, we are falling in love with the monstrous love interests. Maybe they've got tentacles, cryptids, monsters, weird appendages. It's time for non-human love, with a little bit of a focus on Lily Mayne's Soul Eater series. Meg, what are your general thoughts on non-human romantic sexual love stories?
I love monster romance. I think that monster romance is one of the most interesting things to come out of the genre since the rise of Kindle Unlimited, because I don't think it could have happened without KU, and now it has exploded in such an incredible and fascinating way that, like, monster romance is like an entirely, I feel like monster romance took over for historical romance in a lot of ways. Just like, let's take these unbelievably huge over-the-top characters, but then let's, like, also give them weird appendages.
Do you remember, like, the first monster romance or first, like, because I would also like to delineate, for me, there's a difference between alien and monster.
I agree.
Monsters are also different from, like, supernatural creatures in a way. Like, I would think of, like, werewolves not as monsters.
Correct.
Okay.
I would say paranormal, and I think we had a little bit of this discussion last year when we did our paranormal episode. I would say that paranormal is, like, sort of the mythical beings that live within our world or environment typically. So it's like werewolves, vampires, demons, ghosts. Like, those all feel paranormal to me in a way that monsters doesn't. And it almost feels like we were talking at some point about the difference between, like, urban fantasy and high fantasy, right? Was that on this podcast? Where we were like, urban fantasy happens in the existing world, whereas fantasy happens in either an alternate world or an alternate timeline. And I think that monsters can still live in the present world, and they do in Soul Eater, but it's like a dystopian version of the existing world. So I would call it monsters and not paranormal. In part because paranormal, I think you have these archetypes of, you know, 2 episodes, you did an entire episode about vampires. And we know vampires versus monsters can sort of take on any form that the person wants.
They don't have as clearly delineated, I'll say, species in a way. Like, there are different ways to do a vampire, but ultimately we still recognize it as a vampire shape.
Right.
With monsters, the stuff, there's plenty of options out there. Do you remember?
But also there are some archetypes in monsters that I think I would still call monsters, even though I think they're like orcs, for example. I would still consider an orc to be a monster, but not paranormal. And I don't know what the delineation is in my head of why an orc would fit there, but not paranormal. I don't know. But I think often monsters are not falling into any of the, or maybe minotaurs too. I'd call minotaur a monster, but not a paranormal. And I don't have a clear reason why I would make that delineation.
Monsters vibes. It's just vibes.
Just monster vibes.
That's all it is. No, I agree.
Sexy monster vibes. I want a sticker that says sexy monster vibes.
I'm adding it to our storefront, writing it down. No, I agree with you. I think that's kind of how I see it too. Do you remember what the first, I'll call it monster romance that you ever read was? Was it Morning Glory, since you mentioned minotaurs?
You know, I think it may have been Stalked by the Kraken. So I think I started with the Kraken. Let me look it up because I have it here. It is Stalked by the Kraken by Lily and Lark. I read her entire series of monstrous matches. But that one is, so the female character is a witch. So it does have some paranormal vibes. She has a love bathhouse where she does matchmaking. It's very, like, cozy. Very cozy. And I think that's also something you can get away with monsters that you can't always get away with in paranormal. But she does matchmaking for these monstrous or paranormal creatures. And she herself gets matched with a kraken. And so in her bathhouse, she has people meet there so that way she can gather their, like, sexual energy into the walls of the bathhouse and therefore use it to power her powers as a witch. So it does have some interesting paranormal vibes because of the witchy component. But, I mean, a kraken is not paranormal. He is, like, ancient underwater sea monster. He's not just a werewolf.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So
what about you? What was your first like monster book?
Honestly, I don't remember. I remember the one that I first read in what I'll call my modern reading era. So in the last couple of years, I do remember reading Soul Eater by Lily Mayne, which we're gonna talk about. I think that was probably a deliberate choice to read monster. I feel like it's never really been a genre of mine. I do like paranormal. I like fantasy, but monster, I think for me wasn't something I enjoyed because I would always get stuck on the logistics of it because I can't picture what these things look like. I would always be like, but how? How? What goes where? What gets inserted into tab B? Like, how are things physically moving in space? Because I couldn't picture it. It was always like a weird barrier to me. And a lot of times, non-human, just in general, there's a lot of fluids and I don't like
especially it. With orcs and minotaurs. Like they are.
Yeah, like the volume.
Effusive lovers.
The volume. Yeah. And then things like, I was never into it, but when I was a huge anime fan in high school, when I was living in Tokyo, like tentacle porn is a thing that's very popular and very, I don't want to say common because it's not quite common, but when I would think of non-human, that's what I would think of would be tentacle hentai, tentacle porn. That was kind of where I probably had exposure to it first was in hentai. Because when you're an anime fan and you start getting into queer anime, tentacle porn is not far behind. It's a very low barrier to entry. So
it's the gateway drug.
It's the gateway drug. Tentacle hentai is the gateway drug into monster romance. There we go. That's the clip. That's the clip for the show. So it was not something I liked. I knew I had exposure to it. But when I deliberately made a choice to read specifically monster romance, it was reading Soul Eater by Lily Mayne. And then, I got into C. Rochelle through her Villainous series. And I went back and read previous works by her, which was her Herculea, like her monstrously mythic series.
I love her Herculea series.
The 12 Hunks of Herculea. And then I think Valhalla is Full of Hunks is the second book.
Yeah, that's
Herculea the hero. And then there's Valhalla is Full of Hunks. Yeah, and I really liked C. Rochelle, but I didn't really know this series, that series very much. So I started reading that and I was like, oh, this is a definite why choose. I think there's 12 characters.
Yeah, all 12 monsters of the Herculean trials. Yeah, obviously.
So there was a lot of going in there and it was like like just hold down the key card. So that's probably the earliest exposure I had would probably be Soul Eater by Lily Mayne and then the Herculea series by
I think Soul Eater was early for me too. I think I heard about it through the Bonkers Romance podcast. So I don't know what the format is of it anymore, but back when it started, because they've made a couple iteration changes, but back when they started, it was they would bring on a guest. The guest would choose the book. One of the co-hosts would read it, and then the other one wouldn't. And so they would have to go through and say, oh my God, and then here's what happened. Did you know this one has a cock pocket? And they always got really excited about cock pockets.
That is an odd choice to get excited about. I don't know.
But it was meant to be bonkers. It was what's the weirdest shit that you've seen in the romance genre. So they talked about a lot, but I listened to their episode on Soul Eater and I was like, I kind of need to read this now. And then I went through the whole Lily Mayne oeuvre, because then her writing captivated me. I think you can have a really interesting monster, but you still have to write incredibly well.
Yeah. And I will say, Lily Mayne, we've talked about her on the show before. She's so fucking talented. I know Drea loves the Monster series, more specifically the Monsters audiobook series. Like, Lily sending all good vibes. I know she's been going through cancer for the last year or so. But between this and the Goliath of Wrestling series, she's so brilliant. But with Soul Eater specifically, because we're going to use that as kind of the framing device to talk about this. That book came out in March of 2021. It was her debut fucking novel.
How?
And it has 10,000
is a debut novel this good?
Amazon reviews and 25,000 reviews on Goodreads. What the fuck, Lily?
And universally beloved too. Like this is a weird book.
Yes.
And people love them.
It's so good. And I remember I just kept seeing it come up on, like, I'm going to call it my For You page, but in my Kindle app, it just kept saying recommended. And I would read the summary and I'd go, it's monster. Like, I'm not really into, like, not human. And it just kept coming and coming up and coming up and coming up and coming. And finally I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to read the first couple chapters. It's KU. Like, I'll just get it. And from the first fucking chapter, I was just like, this is fucking phenomenal.
You're in it with Danny. Danny is being sent to the slaughter from this monster. And he's terrified. And then he's the only survivor. And you're like, how? Why? What? Why? Danny? The whole book, I feel like I could, if you were to do my internal monologue, my whole book would just be like, Danny, are you okay, Danny? Like,
I know. It's so, okay. So quick summary for those of you who have not read the Monsters series. So Monsters right now has like 7 books out, plus some additional short stories and novellas on her Patreon, plus like almost like an anthology series, I'll call it, where she's collected a lot of her short stories and some of the novellas into an extra book. She is working on the next one again, you know, with her health. It's been a little bit delayed, but the book basically opens with our character, Danny, who is in the military. And we very quickly find out that 20 years ago, a rift opened up in the world that monsters came through and kind of took over everything. So now humanity is very, very small. There's not very many people left. They're all along the coastlines in these like horrific cities that are cramped and there's not enough resources. Or you live out in the wastes, which is pretty much the rest of the continental US. And there are raiders and there's fights over resources. And there's a lot of, obviously monsters just trotting around, doing their thing, eating people, killing things. And Danny, his mom has just died and he has nobody. So he's like, I guess I'm going to join the military. And Danny, our little marshmallow, is very much not a soldier. No. But the novel opens with him being out with his other military folks in a mission to capture the Soul Eater, which is this creature that kills things.
Which, like, what a reputation. God, right? To be called the Soul Eater.
Oh, yes. And this Soul Eater is this horned, cloaked, and hooded figure who shows up every couple years, every 3 years, making his way across the country, slaughtering humans apparently indiscriminately. And the military is like, we have to stop him. So Danny is in a situation where he is cannon fodder. Him and this first unit are just there to distract the Soul Eater and get murdered, while a secondary, quote unquote, more elite team is hidden and is going to try to capture him. And people around him are murdered and the blood and the viscera are flying around. And Danny has a moment of like, what am I doing? Why am I here? There's some, he's going through a little bit of a crisis of faith. Maybe the bad time to have that moment in the middle of stare on a battlefield surrounded by the corpses of your fallen brethren.
But I wonder how many people have that moment when they're on the battlefield going, why am I here? What was this all for?
Yeah. So soon Danny realizes he is the only one from his squad left alive, and Soul Eater is kind of like right up in there, and he blacks out. And when he wakes up, he is back in the base, the Nebraska military base. And he wakes up, he gets dressed, and he goes to find his superiors, and they're like, oh, we captured the Soul Eater. He wants to see you. And you're like, what the fuck? What is happening? Yeah. And Danny, our sweet little baby angel Danny Marshmallow, is essentially conscripted by his superiors to question the Soul Eater.
And because thus, he is the only one that the Soul Eater will talk to.
And he's the only one he didn't kill.
Yeah.
So Danny is taken to the cell where the Soul Eater, whose name is Wynn, is waiting. And thus begins a couple of days of like questioning and quid pro quo Clarice with Wynn in the Hannibal Lecter role, asking questions, and Danny trying to ask the questions that his superiors want him to ask, but feeling kind of a weird connection with Wynn. Eventually Wynn breaks out and he takes Danny with him. And he says, you can try to go back to the military, which they might have a problem with since I broke you out, or you can go on the waste, or you can stay with me. And Danny's like, I don't fucking know. I guess I'll stay with you. I'm intrigued. And eventually they do develop a relationship. The military
and we
comes
should
back.
also the military base has been flattened. It is, is no more, according to Wynn anyway.
Yes.
The military base has been burned. All of the monsters have been released. And so even if Danny were to go back to the military base, they would assume that he is somehow complicit in this exit, even though he literally blacked out and woke up somewhere else. They don't know what happened there. They seem to think that he has some sort of mind control or something happening with the soul
he's driven other prison guards crazy before.
Yeah, and during that quid pro quo session, Wynn asked some questions that also make Danny think, where it's like, instead of saying, like, Wynn is like, why are you're not trying to learn from us, you're trying to control us, you're trying to figure out how to control the monsters. And it sort of plants that seed in Danny's head where he's sort of like neutral military, like, I don't want to be here, but he starts to be anti-military in the room with Wynn, where he's like, oh, well, I have this choice of military or serial killer. I guess I'll go with a serial killer because at least he's not trying to control me, right? Like, at least he's not trying to harness the energy of these evil beings in order to be more powerful. Like, it starts to raise questions in Danny's head of, why are they holding all of these monsters captive? What are they trying to get out of it?
The military is doing some weird fucking testing, so that's part of what decimates the military base when Wynn kind of breaks them both out as he releases the Reek. He releases some of the other creatures that show up later in the series, and shit goes bad. Eventually, they do form a relationship. Danny begins to understand what Wynn's real role is, that he's not an indiscriminate murderer. He does have a higher purpose. He does have a reason for doing things. He doesn't really necessarily hate humans. He thinks they're beneath him, and he is a far superior creature. But he forms a connection with Danny.
To be fair, he is a far superior creature. It's not very, like, very indiscriminate. Old. No, he is way cooler than us.
He's so fucking cool. I love Wynn. And you know, they form a relationship that becomes sexual. They fall in love. Lots of traversing around the United States and meeting, you know, Wynn's friend Eden, big purple beast who comes in book 2. And they also know that the military is coming after them. There are several times where the military is almost caught up to them, and they're just trying to, you know, live their life, do their thing. And then eventually a scene that makes me cry every single fucking time is Danny and Wynn are out and about, and all of a sudden a sniper takes out half of Wynn's head. And he falls to the ground, and Danny is like inconsolable. He thinks that Wynn has been murdered, and he gets captured by his former superior officers, who then torture him, brand him, beat him almost to death to, one, punish him for running away with a monster, but two, try to figure out what he knows about
They're trying
Wynn
to get information out of him.
How can they control him? Wynn does rescue him. Danny has to go through a recovery process, physically, mentally, emotionally, all those things. And then the book kind of ends with them recommitting to each other, getting into their groove, and continuing to go off on adventures. And Wynn and Danny come back in many of the books as kind of the main couple that pop up several times and help us learn more and more about the monster world and the different species and the different characters.
They're still traveling the world. They don't really settle into any of these locations that some of the other books explore, but they do have an epilogue book.
Yeah, because they do get a house in the monster world.
And
Wynn builds my house.
Yeah, and they share their life force. They go through that sort of, like, you know, Wynn is eternal, he is immortal, but he's going to give half of his years to Danny and half of his strength to Danny, so that way he doesn't have to live without Danny, which is like, the romance that you can get into with the monsters.
I tell you, there is something I love about super tough boy who is squishy for only one human. And it's really funny that in later books, when Wynn is hanging out with Moth, with Ghost, with Charlie, he's just like, my Danny is far superior to all of you. Like, I chose him, so clearly he is the best. But where do we even start with just how fucking good this story is?
Well, let's start with Danny. Let's start with Danny and
soldier number 5767697. Yeah.
Like, why Danny is such a great introduction to this world. right? The choice to take a protagonist, to put him up against a wall, and to introduce him to someone that he's supposed to be afraid of, but he's not afraid of, is such a brilliant storytelling move, because we are a single POV in this book. This is only Danny's perspective. So the whole time we only get these little snippets of Wynn where he has engaged with him. We don't get the, ancient creature thought process. We just get little sweet, naive
23-year-old Danny.
I was about to say weak, but I actually don't think he's weak. I think he's confused. Right?
He's 23. What have we said about new adults on this show? And I think I loved how she made him 23, because it means he has a little bit of a memory of the pre-monster times.
Yeah.
And he thinks about when they still had access to resources. He fantasizes about his mom's mac and cheese that probably came from a box, but it was probably the best thing he's ever eaten. And Wynn's like, I will find it for you. And we're like, oh God, squishy Wynn. But yeah, I love Danny because I don't think it's naivete, and I don't necessarily think it's him being sheltered. It's just he does not have survival skill.
He's young, but he's not jaded.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people who join the military out of necessity might feel this way, where it's not like, I want to be a hero, I want to go shoot guns. It's like, no, this is survival. This is the only choice that I have. And therefore he's put into this precarious situation of being cannon fodder, of needing to get information for his superiors that he doesn't necessarily respect, that he doesn't feel good about what they're going to do with that information, but he also doesn't want to get the shit kicked out of him, which he does later, but he sort of has to toe this line. And he's in a very tough position, and then Wynn gets him out of it, and he's in another tough position, and he just continues. And I think this is what's so good about putting it into a dystopian society is there are no easy solutions. There are no easy answers. Every once in a while you get a little bit of like a luxury apartment that they land on, or like a nice house that they get into. But even then they continue to move because Wynn has a job to do. And so it's like this really dark space that they're in. But oh my God, now I feel like I'm gonna sing Rihanna and be like, we found love in a hopeless place, we found love in a hopeless place.
You're welcome. No, it really is that though, because I think when I was thinking about I'll call it interspecies romance, there's certain common tropes that show up, and one of them is this idea of tropes that cross the divide. Falling for someone you shouldn't, because we are two different species logistically. How does that work? And in this case, it's falling for a creature, because I do believe the humans mostly see the monsters as a bit of a monolith in that way. They are here to destroy us and kill us all, which we know is not true. We find monsters later in the series who have no interest in crossing in humans. Some of the other monsters we find are literally just they're the insects of the monster world. They're just kind of eat shit and die type of deal. But the safety and the danger tangled together, especially when Danny first meets Wynn, because he's intrigued. But also one of the things he mentioned is Wynn is 6'3", I think. And he says, sure, he's not as big as some of the other monsters. Eden is over 7 feet.
7 feet tall? Yeah.
Yeah. But he's but
the reek is huge because he's all wings.
Yeah. When Ori transforms into his reek form, he's fucking and then you have Gloam, who's even taller,
just like a beast, just like a
they're fucking huge things. But it's there's different languages, there's different instincts, and Wynn might not be as physically large as some of them, but one of the things that Danny kind of clocks early on is his presence, but also his voice. When he's first getting used to hearing Wynn's voice, it's fucking scary.
Yeah,
there's an otherworldly shit to it. So yeah, a Rihanna karaoke moment seems appropriate for this.
And I think also one of the really incredibly smart storytelling moves that you can do with monsters is, there are going to be bad monsters out there. There are bad actors, no matter what your species, no matter what your, gender, race, whatever your presentation is. But none of these monsters are malicious. There are malicious monsters out there, and each of them in their own way can seem malicious or dangerous. So let's talk about Wynn specifically, because we're talking Soul Eater. There's this, when Danny introduces us to him, his reputation is he just murders with no rhyme or reason. And then, you know, they're walking and Danny doesn't want to ask questions, which is, again, it's a completely human reaction of like, I'm at this person's mercy. I don't want to bother them. But also it's so good for storytelling. So, you know, Wynn just like catches a smell on the wind and starts walking, and Danny follows him, and he ends up watching Wynn kill someone. But he realizes while Wynn is killing this victim that there's an otherworldly presence in this person. There's like a sludgy, slimy, sorry to mention all of these visceral words.
It's gross.
To you.
There's eggs. So there's egg sacs, and there's wet noises when he squishes them. Yeah. It's
and there's like a black sludgy thing that comes out of this person's body. And that's when it becomes clear to us as readers that Wynn is not murdering with no reason. He is killing these parasites. He is actually saving humanity. Yeah. And Danny's like, well, why didn't you tell anyone? And he's like, why?
I don't care what people think of me. Literally. Yeah. He's the only character I've ever heard say, I don't care what others think of me. And I've actually fucking believed
I believe
them.
him.
I believe
him. Like, he's so ancient. His whole body is covered in scars that have, like, healed themselves. He, you know, and maybe you get that sense of, like, he is so old that even if he had explained it the first 100 times that somebody shot at him, it wouldn't have mattered because human fear instincts are so strong. So it's like, okay, well, this is just what happens. Humans just try to hunt me, and sometimes they blow out my brains and I come back. Like, they can't stop me. So why? It's almost like flicking like a mosquito off of you is what it feels like to me. Is he's so otherworldly and so unharmed by anything they can throw at him. Except, you know, blowing out his brains, but it takes a week to fucking grow back his head.
It takes him a little bit of time to grow the head back.
Right? But this idea of, like, why would I need to justify my actions to this species that is beneath me? I'm just trying to stop the parasites from taking over. I don't care who is harmed in the process. And then his reputation is, wow, he just kills people. Because humans see what they want to see, which is there's this person who was in my house. He walked into my house. They died. So obviously he murdered them. They don't necessarily see the things happening around them because people choose to see what they want to see. And that's just like, it's so true that people see what they want to see, that they would blame the person who comes into the house, not the person who has been infected that may or may not be visible to them.
And that's an aspect of Soul Eater that I really like, is having a lot of human perspective on it, even though it's technically wrong. He doesn't kill indiscriminately, Wynn in particular, but there's a lot of impressions that people form of him. When you compare it to something like the Herculea series, a lot of Leia's interactions with her monstrous folks are in like the supernatural world, or like in the monstrous world, or on their like little hidden island. It's been a couple years since I've read this, so I don't remember all those things. But like, there's no other humans around except for her cousin, who shows up a couple times, right? So Leia interacting with these monsters, she's still our gateway character into understanding the different species and how they work and how they communicate. But you're only getting her singular perspective because all the other characters are monsters. And they're like, yeah, that's the Minotaur. That's the Symphalian bird. That's Jorgamund, or whatever his name is, the big snaky thing that's going to cause Ragnarok, right? Like, we only get Leia's perspective on it. And she's horny as fuck for monsters. So, like, good on you, girl. But with Soul Eater, not only is Danny having to kind of learn who Wynn is as an individual, he's also combating the entire human-built narrative around the monsters and about Wynn in particular. And that's a heavy lifting mental load for sweet baby angel Danny.
And I think the next two books have that same vibe too, where it's also two, you know, military people who went AWOL. Now, they made a more conscious decision to do so. They weren't carried out of the base. But they also have to go through this. Whereas then in later books, it's a little bit less of that sort of military deprogramming. But there is still always that vibe of, I was told that species Not that individual, but that species is dangerous. Therefore, I should stay away from them. I should fear them. I should try to kill them. And this is not universal to monster books. I think some monster books can be a bit more accepting. I know you haven't read Morning Glory, Milky Farm, or any of those, but there are certainly much more of like a cozy vibe to some monster books where it's like, I am a human, but my next door neighbor is an orc and my boyfriend is a minotaur. And this is just the way that the world is in this world. Same with Ashley Bennett's Leviathan Fitness series, where it's like, these are humans who work out at a gym, and so it's Muscles and Monsters. This is the first book, and like, she is a baker who lives up the street from the gym, and she drops the wedding cake, and the hot personal trainer from up the street comes and picks it up and scoops it up for her, and then they work out together, and it's like very sweet and cozy, and you don't necessarily make it feel like a monster. That one has a kraken too, where like he just works out in the pool and helps the other guy learn to be a better swimmer because he's a fucking kraken. And you know, like, sometimes there are just sweet, cozy monsters, but they're not in these dystopian environments that you get from Lily Mayne's Monstrous. So I think monsters can go either way of it being, you know, this is just the normal new world. This is almost like a fantasy version of the world. Or this is the more kind of urban fantasy side of things where it's grittier in Lily Mayne's world. It's, you know, there's cults. There's like...
no resources. You're always dirty. Like there's no transportation. So Wynn and Danny literally hike across North America. They do steal a military truck for a couple days, but yeah, that is a good point to contrast dystopian monster versus monsters.
Cozy monster?
They live amongst us. Although you describing Morning Glory Milking Farm, which admittedly I have not read yet, I think it's probably going to have to happen, as a cozy romance when I know so much of the fluids contained therein.
I think you can be cozy and still sticky. I don't think those are mutually exclusive. Yeah. Okay, for my birthday next year. For my birthday, we'll read Morning Glory Milking Farm. It will be the request. And then you can choose a book that you want me to read the next week. That'll be our February 2026 plan.
Our birthday episodes.
Episodes. We both get a birthday episode this year. There
we go. Okay, I want to read the description of Wynn from early on in the book, because I highlighted this because I think a big part of monster romance is sex and attraction to things that are not human. And I will say, out of all the monsters in the Lily Mayne series, Wynn is probably the most humanoid. And even then, he's got some differences. But there are some that are like, I think it's Seraph. That is like, oh, his entire head is just eyeballs. Interesting.
It's all eyeballs and tentacles. And like, he doesn't really speak. He just makes noises. And still somehow you fall in love with him. And I'm like, Lily Mayne, you're a goddamn genius.
I don't know how. Okay, so... this is from Danny's perspective. Intel told us he was roughly 6'5", so not a giant like some of the other monsters. Still, his presence was overwhelming, even from this distance. Even though I couldn't see his face because the hood was up on his calf-length gray coat with its ragged hem, heavy black boots came up to mid-calves and blended into tight black pants and a loose black shirt. But it was the horns that grabbed my attention. Long black horns that stabbed out from the depths of his hood and curved back around his head. Wisps of long black hair had escaped and moved gently in the breeze, but where his face was supposed to be, there was just impenetrable black. I shuddered in horror. Did he even have a face? What was under there? I also noticed that his skin was pure white, almost gray, but his fingertips were black, like he had serious frostbite. And then he goes on to say, his voice was inhuman, so unnatural I could barely comprehend it, like a million agonized screams crying out in harmony, like the thing you imagine lived under your bed as a kid, whispering to you in the dead of night.
God, that's fucking terrifying.
Oh my God.
It's terrifying.
It is scary. You're like, and Danny wants to fuck that? He does. And it's a big bone of contention between Danny and Wynn that Wynn won't let Danny see his face. He never pulls back the hood. Anytime they are intimate, it's like lights are off, the hood is on.
72% of the book, we don't see Wynn's face. And then the day after we see Wynn's face, it gets blown the fuck off.
Yeah.
What a choice.
He gets to see like a little bit of it, like early on at like the 15% part of the book. He can see face shaped. We're like, good job. His face is face shaped. Nice job, Danny.
He has a chin.
Sharp angles, big holes for eyes, one black and one white, glowing like they burned from inside, pale lips revealing sharp white teeth. And then the face was gone. Yeah. Although I gotta say, Wynn's pretty hot. Lily has some fantastic art of Wynn and Danny, and it's real good. And then it's at page 230, so 70% in. Chapter 21 starts with, I was seeing it, finally seeing it. Mismatched eyes, one completely jet black, the other pure white with just a pinprick of a pupil, a prominent brow bone that blended into a flat, bridgeless nose, sharp cheekbones, lots of scars, his horns really long, and then like soft hair. So this guy's a hot Voldemort.
Yeah, pretty much. More of a nose. More hair. Hairy Voldemort.
Yeah. The logistics of okay. What are your thoughts on when you have monster romance where at least one of the characters is being shown the parts and the bits for the first time and they're realizing, wow, this is really different. Like, how do you begin to process the bits and bobs?
You know, one of the things that I love about monster romance is that idea of like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? So there are, and I think also like romance as a genre is so directed towards these traditional forms of beauty, and part of the rise of monster romance or plus size characters or characters with disabilities or any sort of physical difference from the expectation of that kind of perfect human form. We get to see that from the perspective of the person who is falling in love with that character. So it's not just like I can look at a picture on Lily Mayne's Instagram of the fan art and go, oh, he's kind of hot. It's that I get to hear Danny thinking about the horns and going, oh, damn, those are some sexy horns, right? Like, I would never like look at a bull in a field and be like, them some sexy horns, right? But like,
no, but you would if it was Tom Hiddleston wearing them as Loki. That's kind of what his helmet looks like. Is like Wynn's horns.
It's not untrue. But because we get Danny's perspective on it, and same with, you know, anytime that we see somebody who is not traditionally quote unquote beautiful in a book, but we still have a character who sees them and loves them for what they are. And I think that Lily does this so well in Soul Eater, where it's like, because he has his hood on for 70% of it, because he is this ancient, like all-encompassing character, and he's still insecure that Danny will think that he's ugly.
It is really nice.
It's so sweet. And
I love it when he's talking to Eden, and Eden, because you know they're bestest buds, and Wynn's like, I tolerate him, but truly he is my best friend. Like he's just like, just show him. And he goes, but what if he doesn't like it? And we're like, oh, now it's sweet baby Wynn.
Sweet baby.
Don't ever call him that.
No, you would get your brains destroyed, just ripped to shreds. The only one who could do that is Danny. And even at the end, he's like, don't tell anyone that I'm soft and squishy for you. But you know, even though he is not like conventionally beautiful, Danny has to really convince him and say like, I don't care what you look like. And it's not that I don't think that you will be attractive. It's that whatever you look like will be attractive to me because I'm already in love with you. And that is one of the strongest things that we can play with in monster romance is it doesn't matter if they would be attractive to us. I think about like A Soul to Keep by Opal Rain, where it's like these monsters look terrifying to me on the covers, and she doesn't shy away from like sharing these like weird like, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say weird. Like normally I try to be non-judgmental, but these monsters look fucking weird. They are they're like horse heads with skulls and hair, but like no skin. Not sexy looking to the conventional human eye, but then you read it and you're like, wow, that guy's sweet. You know, like you get the and I think that's part of what works in so many of these monster romances is that they are terrifying and cinnamon rolls. They're so super sweet, and like maybe not even sweet to everyone, but sweet to their partner. They are like so loyal to their mates, essentially, which is just something that you can fall in love with. And then you get to see their appearance through their mate's eyes, and it's just all heart eyes emojis, you know?
Yeah, and I like that point because I was just looking back through the Monstrous series and trying to kind of look at who's more human and who's not. And Wynn is, obviously he's not human. He has a little bit more humanoid shape. Eden, not so much. You know who I have in mind when I think of Eden? Did you ever watch the Gargoyles cartoon? Mm-hmm. I don't remember the main character's name. Goliath, I think. The main gargoyle. That's who I kind of picture as Eden, but purple. The Reek, like Ori, the wings and his Reek form are very definitely non-human.
Definitely not human.
He has like he has a human-ish face, but and Gloam, he's kind of like a big rock monster in a way. Like he's definitely got like a non-human face. And he's quite large and gray. And Moth is kind of humanoid. He's half human, half Salic, I think is how you say it. So he kind of looks like an elf. And there is a short story later where they're like maybe a little bit of elf role play with his partner who really likes elves. But like Seraph, no, not humanoid other than the fact that he has hands. And then Lore is kind of human-ish, elf-ish. They're just blue. So, but there are definitely characters in here that are still portrayed, yes, as the romantic lead, even as they are very much not. I think the hardest one for me to read was Seraph, just because I couldn't picture it. And Seraph is the one that has all the eyes, right?
Seraph is the one that had all the eyes and spends most of the time in a cage, too. So there's like a certain level of unpredictability and like captivity that also plays into that, which is hard to read. These are beautiful romances. They are not easy reads.
True. Yeah, some of the, like, when people talk about what happened to their life when the monsters came, or even in Soul Eater when Wynn and Danny are going around, and Danny says that he prefers to stay in hotel rooms because if he stays in someone's house, he's always thinking what happened to them. Like it feels weird to sleep in someone else's house, so he tries to do hotels. Yeah, very, very hard to read in some senses.
Like there's torture, there's kidnapping, there's like hard shit happens in these books, and I understand why Lily wrote it this way and then went and wrote Goliath's Wrestling, because that was probably the escape in her writing of like, okay, that shit is dark and I just need people who are wearing like pink clothes and like walking around carrying their heads under their arms, and like it's just like so much more light and playful, which is hard to make that transition from dystopian to like just pure joy. But her writing is so good that I think she could do anything.
Yeah, and I think part of the joy is when Danny finally gets Wynn naked and he's like, cool, show me what's under the hood, and he's literally like looking at it going, okay, he doesn't have a dick, he doesn't have balls, but it's not really female genitalia either. I guess it's close. Oh no, wait. There's a treat inside.
There it comes.
And I just have this vision of like somebody just like kind of poking it and just being like, ooh, what's this? And it's later on. I don't remember if it's one of Wynn's short
honestly,
stories
like
or somebody
anatomically,
else.
Anatomically, that is a really smart evolutionary practice. Like the fact that male bodies just have their like sex organs hanging out for like, it's very vulnerable. Like having someplace inside your body to store that is incredibly smart from an evolutionary perspective. So I'm just gonna say, like,
it makes wearing tight pants a lot easier too.
Yeah, and I mean, like, how many romance novels have we read where there's like an accidental boner that everybody sees, you know?
Yeah.
Not Wynn.
The logistics are interesting. And he also he's a little ashamed later that he, because he's like, why do you have a navel? Like a belly button? And he's like, well, I'm born from eggs because I'm the same species as the parasite stuff that I'm destroying. And he thinks Danny's going to be like, think that's gross. And Danny just kind of goes, oh, okay. Yeah. Sweet baby angel.
Like, I've already gotten over the fact that I'm in love with an ancient serial killer, parasite killing monster. That eggs, who cares?
I love in the second book when people found out that Eden was book 2. And you know, if you read book 1, how big Eden is, that people were immediately like, oh my God, how is that going to work? What does she do? She gives him a big human.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a smart writing decision.
Lily is a logistics queen.
Yeah.
This is what I'm learning about.
And
Lily.
apparently a size queen too.
Yeah, that's true also in the Hercules series is the size difference is prominent. As is the number of peoples. It's not a double stuff Oreo. It's more. I think it's 12, right? Like it's
12. It's 12. It's 12 monsters
plus Hercules. So technically it's 13.
Yeah.
Oh damn. We talked about like writing multiple POVs in different series, like just 13 bodies in space.
Well, never are all 13 of them having an orgy, though. Like it is. C. Rochelle definitely like paired them off, so I don't think it was ever more than 4 in the room at a given time.
I think there was a couple seasons where it was probably closer to 6, and with other people in the room. But I don't think
the room
all 13 directly engaging. I think there was one where like 6 of them were going at it. It was a lot. It's been a while for me. It's a lot of logistics. It is delightful.
I'm sure there were many Post-it notes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, any final thoughts on why readers may love like monster non-human romance?
I think a lot of it is escapism of just like modern dating and modern men are not easy.
Get yourself a Minotaur.
And if you can find an alternative that will take care of you in this way, I think it's almost like, there was the rise of the billionaire books 20 years ago of like, wow, there will be a man that can just take care of me. And then we realized just how problematic billionaires are to society. It's like, well, how can I still get that feeling of somebody who is outside of the societal expectations of masculinity, who will take care of me in every way that I need to be taken care of, but also doesn't need to like go by the rules of our society. That's really appealing when there's a dumpster fire of politics right now.
Yeah, it's kind of calling back to monsters like vampires as being both cautionary tales and like sexy outsiders who are kind of giving the middle finger metaphorically to human norms or societal expectations. We're just doing it with monsters, literally.
It seems like there's always some level of subversion going on here of like whether your non-humanoid partner of choice is one of the paranormal archetypes or a straight up monster. Traditional kraken or minotaur or just kind of made up, this is the monster in this universe. There is a level of subversion of culture and society's expectations that you can get completely outside of here's what you expect. So many of them are also like they're cinnamon rolls, but they're also alphas. They're also in charge. They're also taking control of the situation, taking care of their humans. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. They can be strong and soft little marshmallows on the inside. And that's such a delightful thing to escape to.
Yeah. When we explore the other in this sense, it's really, you could get real academic with it, because we do like a side of academic theory with our porn, is exploring otherness in terms of culture, in terms of class, in terms of ability and orientation and knowledge is definitely present. And I think for the monsters, it's like they get to be free from all the human shit. They can they can express themselves the way they want to. Like Wynn saying, I literally don't care about what any of you do or think. You are not even worth my time and thought. And me believing him in that, not just being like a facade, that to just be that is kind of refreshing and freeing in a way, to just be like, I don't have to do any of that shit. And that's what creates freedom for Danny, is he doesn't have to go to the military. He doesn't have to become a raider. He doesn't have to go to one of the coastal cities and live on nothing. He can just be and do whatever he wants on a day-to-day basis with Wynn. And eventually their little cottage by a hot spring in the monster world. Because that's his dream. HGTV renovation show. Monster World.
What is it that you ship the most about, I don't know, about this book, about this series, about monster romance in general? What's the big ship for you?
I think for this book specifically, it's Wynn. I think he's such a great anchor character for the rest of the series. There's some really fun side stories where Moth is such a fanboy of Wynn's. Like, he's like, do you know who that is? That's the soul. Like, and he tries to like kind of hang out and try to be cool around Wynn, and Wynn kind of like throws him a bone. He's like, yeah, I'll throw you how to, I'll show you how to do this thing with a knife. I'll show you how to do this. And Moth is like, yeah, that'd be, that'd be totally cool. Yeah, I'd really like to do that. Yeah, cool. I kill people. I'm working on how to disembowel somebody without like piercing their intestines. Totally cool. We are the same. So I think it's Dany and it's Wynn, and I love the last chapter of Soul Eater is Wynn's perspective of their first meeting. Because one thing we didn't mention is that he's also like imprinted Jacob and Renesmee style on Dany. And Eden does kind of call him out a little bit on this in the early book. It's like, you've imprinted and you haven't told Dany. So it doesn't really play a huge role, that whole idea of imprinting being like against their will or whatever. And Dany actually has that conversation with Wynn, somebody like, what does this mean? Is it real? And he's like, no, it doesn't create things, it just solidifies them. So I just love Wynn is like that anchor character that shows up everywhere, is kind of like the crotchety older brother that's like so cool you can't handle it, but every so often he'll deign to like have a beer, whatever the monster equivalent of it there is. Meg, what about you? What did you ship the most about this?
I'll do monster romance in general. I think the thing that I ship the most is the otherness, is the embracing of the non-traditional characters as kind, as desirable, as good partners, and I think in a world that is on a pendulum swing of acceptance and inclusiveness, being able to take a character who is non-human and say, yep, they're still okay. Like, it's a nice way to be inclusive without needing to be over the top about like wokeness and being too preachy. But it can absolutely be a little bit of a like, maybe you don't have all the answers, and that's okay. That shows up in that self-awareness, self-identity through the course of that romance. So I think that's my favorite thing about Monster. Oh, and also the weird tentacles. All the weird anatomy. It's just fun. It's just fun to be like, what's this one going to look like?
What happens if I flick it, poke it, bop it, squeeze it? Beautiful. All right. Well, before we get into the final question of what we are shipping this week, as you are listening to our dulcet voices in your earballs, just pick up that phone and head on over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, or Substack. Subscribe to the show, rate it, leave us a review. It's all mucho appreciated. Helps more people find out about us, so that we can continue to talk about weird tentacly things in a public forum, because why not? I'm like, Wynn, I don't really care what y'all think. I just want to talk about the fun stuff. Beautiful.
And I am the human who is like, no, I do care. Please say nice things. Please give us nice reviews, please. Tell your friends, please.
Meg, what are you shipping this week?
I am shipping an Instagram account. And I wanted to talk about it on this episode because it is where I get all of my monster recommendations. Her name is Poppy, and the Instagram is monsterlovers_book club. And the only thing that she posts about is monster romance. So recent posts are non-human romance book with disabled main characters that make me feel seen. Another one about knots in non-human romance. One about transgender, non-binary, agender, and gender non-conforming main characters in romance. And so you can find what it is that you love about your romance novels and see how that works for monster romance. So plus size heroines and monsters. So definitely if you want to get recommendations for monster romance with a specific trope or archetype, go over and check out Poppy over at monsterlovers_book club on Instagram, because they have curated such a wide variety of different monster books that fit so many of these different archetypes. What about you, Nikki? What are you shipping this week?
I am shipping the latest series from Sam Burns. Book 1 in the Night and Daywalker series has come out. It's called Smokescreen. It is going to be a slow burn book. So I've read book number 1, and you have a main character named Flynn, who is a human child of one of the vampire leaders of North America, which shouldn't be possible. They should not be able to have human children. He's also a bit of a scatterbrain. He's called a 30-something man-child, but he's also a private investigator. And one of his mother's political frenemies gets murdered, and she asks him to investigate it on the side and find out what is trying to happen, because nobody really believes what's going on. They think there's probably some type of political intrigue. And she also says, by the way, you owe me all of this money that I'm now going to collect. And he's like, I don't have that money, Mom. Thank you for the surprise $80,000 bill you're sticking me with. She goes, oh, that's too bad. By the way, here's a partner for you. I think he'd be a really good private investigative partner. So you should bring him in and then charge him like rent, and he'll bring in more cases because he does different types of work. I think you guys should work together. Oh, plotting vampiric mothers are very interesting. So if you read Sam Burns's Fantastic Fluke series, which is also very fun, it's in the same universe. So it's very fun. There's like some political intrigue going on. I like a slow burn. And by the end of book 1, just as a little spoiler for you, nothing happens between them romantically in book 1 at all. So if that's not your vibe, cool. I really, really liked it. And it's an ongoing book. So nothing's really solved too much in book 1. You kind of, it's one of those things where like the main book plot gets solved, but not the not the bigger story. You just kind of move on to the next one. So if you like political intrigue with slow burn, there is it's been introduced that his partner has a kind of dark history, that a lot of people don't like him and have been trying to kill him, or he was kicked out of his previous place for various reasons, but you don't know why yet. So a little bit of intrigue to go around with it. The next book is called Facade, and I think it's coming out in January, unless Sam Burns finishes it early and releases it earlier. But Smokescreen, Night and Day Walker, book number 1. Definitely recommend.
Wow, you said slow burn, but that is too slow for me burn. So I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I'm glad that you are appreciating it. And you can tell me when it gets to the goodies, and then maybe I'll pick up the whole thing and be able to burn through the first book to get to the second.
Ugh, humans and their instant gratification.
I'm so impatient with I'm like, no, kiss already, kiss.
Do it.
Was that not an alternative like podcast title name that we were discussing? It's Kiss Already.
Honestly, that'd be a really fun one. That could be a fun segment for a future episode. I'm writing it down. Beautiful. All right, well that's it.
I'll find some music to go underneath the Kiss Already segment.
There we go. All right, well that's it for us this week on First Dates and Soulmates. If you want to head on over to the social medias and give us a follow, we are on Instagram, TikTok, and the YouTubes at First Dates and Soulmates. Remember to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Substack, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you want to support the show financially, we do have a TeePublic store linked in the show notes, which there could be some monster merch being added to there into the near future by the time this episode comes out. So be sure to check it out. And you can subscribe to the show on Substack. $7 a month helps support all the work we put into the show, and we would greatly appreciate it. Coming up next week, we are diving into the Scared Sexy Amazon exclusive Kindle Unlimited series by a variety of authors, including Ruby Dixon and Allie Hazelwood, and we'll be diving into that next week. We'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.